Leadership is often described in terms of decisions, strategies, or moments of visible influence. Yet, most leaders are not shaped in those moments. They're shaped in the quieter intervals that surround them. The early mornings before the world begins to pull at their attention. The pauses between meetings when they confront what has been left unfinished. The reflective spaces at the end of the day when they're honest about what they carried well and where they drifted. These intervals form a rhythm, and the rhythm forms the leader. Many leaders try to build impact by focusing on the dramatic parts of the work. They invest energy in the meeting that needs to go well, or the presentation that must land, or the initiative that demands momentum. But the body of leadership is built elsewhere. It is built in the daily habits that protect clarity from erosion, in the patterns that create a sense of continuity, and in the small rituals that reorient the leader to what matters before the noise of urgency and expectation begins to distort the view. Rhythms are not productivity hacks. They are agreements leaders make with themselves about how they will inhabit their days. A rhythm is a way of saying that not everything urgent demands immediate attention. It's an arrangement that assigns value to what is often overlooked: thoughtfulness, preparation, recovery, the slow accumulation of insight. Leaders who ignore these arrangements eventually find themselves improvising in every direction, pulled by the loudest demand rather than guided by the deeper work they intend to do. Now, some rhythms are inward. They involve the reflective practices that help a leader stay oriented. Moments to consider what's shifting in the organization. Spaces to examine what is happening within themselves. Questions that create conditions for honesty, like, what am I avoiding? Where am I being shaped by fear rather than conviction? What is trying to get my attention? Without these inward rhythms, leaders drift into reactivity. They begin to make decisions that are technically correct but internally misaligned because the pace of their responsibilities has outstripped the pace of their self-awareness. Other rhythms are outward. They involve patterns that stabilize a team. Regular check-ins that are not perfunctory but intentional. Predictive time carved out for listening before decisions are finalized. Moments where the leader steps back, not out of disengagement, but to give others room to interpret the work in ways that widen the collective understanding. These outward rhythms tell a team what to expect, and that sense of predictability becomes the ground on which trust grows. In order to hold the entire environment together, leaders need to develop relational rhythms. It is an often ignored rhythm that has the potential either to increase the cohesiveness of a team or to pull it from its full potential. It's often ignored because it requires the most effort. It's easier to stay focused on tasks rather than develop a rhythm that regularly checks in with the strength of the relationships in the environment. The leader who intentionally revisits conversations that felt unfinished, the leader who notices subtle shifts in tone or energy and chooses not to ignore them, the leader who treats feedback not as a task but as a signal that something deeper may need attention, actually taps into something deeper. These relational rhythms are rarely dramatic. They're quiet acts of stewardship that prevent fractures long before they appear on the surface. Rhythms are not static. They evolve as the demands on a leader evolve. A rhythm that served well in one season may distort the view in another. There are times when a leader must slow down in order to regain footing, and there are times when sustained momentum becomes the clarifying force that keeps the work alive. The task is not to find the perfect rhythm. No, the task is to cultivate enough awareness to adjust the rhythm before the leadership environment becomes brittle. For leaders who feel overwhelmed, the absence of rhythm is often the hidden cause. Without patterns that carry the weight of the work, the leader becomes the only structure holding things together. This is rarely sustainable. It's also unnecessary. Rhythms can carry what the leader cannot. They can distribute attention. They can preserve energy. They can hold the leader steady when the demands of the role begin to thin their focus. The point is not to create a more disciplined version of the same life. The point is to establish a way of being that allows the leader to remain responsive without becoming consumed. Rhythms create space for reflection. They create room for clarity. They allow leadership to emerge from intention rather than panic. A leader who tends to their rhythms is not indulging themselves. They're safeguarding the interior conditions that allow wisdom to take shape. They're nurturing the quiet foundations that make consistent leadership possible. And over time, these patterns become the unseen infrastructure of their work, carrying them not because they're strong, but because the rhythm itself has become strong enough to steady them.